Hello again, everyone, and welcome back. We're going to resume here with our last panel discussion on AI and employment. This morning, we've covered lots of subjects. We've talked a lot about the impact of AI globally, business opportunities in AI, and beyond the positive feedback for customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, smart network. We've also identified some challenges, the AI and sustainable development, AI and ethics. And we saw with Vincent and Ndiata, we talked about AI and security. So just as a reminder, before we get going, you can follow us in French and in English. So based on your preferred language, you can decide there. I'm now going to invite Ndiata KALONJI, who's Director of IT and Infrastructure in Africa and Middle East. I'll ask him to come on board with us, and also Philippe TRIMBORN, who will come on board. He's the Director of the Institute of Professions and School Relations for Orange. So hello, Philippe, and hello, Ndiata. Hello, Youssoufa. And hello to everyone who's watching and listening remotely. So Philippe and Ndiata, you're on board with us now. So we'll get started with this session on the impact of AI on employment. Philippe does a Gartner study that says that between now and it was in 2025, and it predicts that AI will replace 1.8 jobs and but create 2.3 jobs. So it's reassuring, isn't it? Because with AI, we may be losing some jobs, but new jobs will be created. So ultimately, the sum is positive there. So that brings me to my first question, Philippe. AI has gained a lot of ground in employment over the past couple of years. What's going on in Orange, and what have you learned? Well, hello, everyone. Hello, Ndiata, remotely there. Well, as you were saying, Youssoufa, you were talking about the Gartner report. This was from 2021. It's never easy to look in the rearview mirror with predictions that were made before. So we're saying 2025. So it was 2021 for 2025. What's strange here, though, is right now Gartner says that there will be 500 million net jobs created for 2033. So it's along the same lines, but something happened between 2021 and today that Gartner hadn't predicted, and that's the AI and generative AI. It's a seismic shock across the world. It's completely changed our bearings, our reference points as well. So the changing of our reference points or points of reference here, it makes us change the way we work for tomorrow, meaning that once you take into consideration the fact that AI is here, exists, and will have a major role, and it's definitely unavoidable in the workplace. So this means we have to make choices today along those lines. In our own behavior as well, we have to have that on board in our minds. So another point. And just because society accepts the idea that AI is everywhere and unavoidable, it doesn't mean it makes everyone happy. Everyone has their own idea. Okay, it's a fantastic innovation, but may not be. It wasn't written beforehand that it would be positive. So the question is, what's the outlook for jobs? Of course, everyone is wondering. Everyone is asking that question. Because to paraphrase it, a lot of people I've spoken with in conferences at the AI summit in Paris, many speakers said, yes, we're worried. Not afraid, but worried. So that's important to remember. Now, this being said, employment comes up constantly, but that's not the first question for us. It's an important question. I'm not denying it, but it shouldn't be the first question we're addressing, because once you take employment, you say, okay, employment will gain more, lose more, whatever. The thing is, it's a given, but we just don't really know how to act or react. We need to take action. And there's an intermediary question which says, okay, well, what are the prospects about working? What does it mean to work with AI today and tomorrow? So the deep-seated question is, working with AI tomorrow, will it be a positive evolution? Will there be satisfaction in our work? Meaning in our work? Will we have the impression that we're doing a good job working with AI? These are fundamental questions because they determine the acceptance of AI today and tomorrow. If we're not comfortable with our work tomorrow, what's the point of discussing and debating about jobs? There are many other difficulties that we have to deal with. So the question is, can we today live with working with AI and consider it a good job? You need the answers to those questions. So this wasn't a given. The initial practitioners were inventing new uses and the way they started working with it and the way they mobilized AI to make it useful. And this is what will condition how AI is accepted and how people use it and how our customers use it. So we have to capture that. We have to understand what the usage is going to be and how meaningful it's going to be. Another lesson is that many people thought that AI was going to be like digital technology. We knew what was going to take place, whereas no. AIs are not predetermined in any way, shape, or form. The way you employ it, the way you use it will determine the consequences, but we have to make those decisions. We have to make those choices, and this is something that's being constructed. There's the technical side of it, there's the economic side of it, there's the human side of it, there's the social side of it. Thank you, Philippe. The point that we're retaining here is the acceptance and social acceptance. How ready and willing we are to include AI in our daily activities. So the movement that we're seeing around AI, will it continue, grow, or perhaps calm down a little bit, this massive AI rollout? Well, I think it's going to continue. Well, let me take a few points here to establish some context. ChatGPT came out in 2022. We tried to figure out what the advancement would be after a year. We had people trialing it out, and then in Orange, what we realized was that in Orange, 65 people were already using it. Not full users constantly every day, all day long, but maybe using it a bit at home. But we had 30% of full users, complete users. 40%, 45% were non-users, non-practitioners of AI, or the ChatGPT. So when you're 60% of your people using it, you're saying it's not reversible, not going back. So AI isn't going to disappear. The question is not today, should we continue, should we stop, should we? No, you look at the issues that AI raises and address them. My conviction is it's not a matter of when or where AI is going to shift. It's just a question of dealing with the challenges that arise with AI. several different natures. We have an issue regarding confidence or trust, because that's a determining factor. To go out and get that 40% of the people who aren't users, they're going to be cautious, they're questioning, they're saying, can I work with it? How is it going to be useful with my job? Or is a company going to take me with this type of technology? And you have to be able to talk about that kind of stuff to know where we start and how far we go. So confidence and trust will happen through social dialogue and other evolutions that I think are necessary so that all of the stakeholders of the AI phenomenon, which will become more and more simplified, people have to be comfortable with it. So it's an important challenge. And then another issue is skills. We have a lack of skills in companies. But we have to be aware that in companies, there's about 20 to 25% of people who are using AI, ChatGPT, that don't mention to their colleagues or bosses. But so different needs, different expectations. You got to get people, got some resistors, you got to get them mobilized. You have to establish a setting of confidence so that they are comfortable sharing what they do with other employees. So something that it's an approach we may need to build or rebuild today so that AI, so that we can get beyond the difficulties that we are experiencing today. Another difficulty is integrating AI on a daily basis. We learn how to use some of them, we use them, but not daily. They're sort of separate tools. So in terms of productivity gains, companies, of course, have this in mind. If productivity growth in the GDP, and so companies and countries do better, the entire society performs better. If you look at AI, can productivity improve? Yes, we've seen, yes, it does a little bit. If you look more attentively with AIs that are better onboarded in daily activity, then productivity gains can be multiplied by 3. Now, if we could do this, include it, integrate it in our environment, we would de facto increase the power behind labor, power behind working. For employees, it means additional, considerable resources for solving problems that we weren't able to do in the past. So there's increase there, and so technical teams, IT divisions, IT departments, they can better optimize company processes and get improved performance. If all of this functions as we hope, we'll be able to make it function in the future. We'll get, from our employee standpoint, return on their investment in development, orientation, and superpowers, as it were. And then for the company, this means we'll be able to free up or unblock a lot of processes to improve those in terms of their fundamentals. And in all of that, keep in mind there's a challenge, and that comes back to the choices that I mentioned earlier. Are we making the right choices today? If we make the right choices in these questions and we get the right balance with the users, we'll establish favorable conditions so that companies and the AI improves performance for everyone. Thank you, Philippe. You mentioned that today we are seeing a massive increase in use and adoption rate, ratcheting up AI. Some people it's professional, for others it's personal needs. But even beyond that, we're seeing a certain appetite in the companies, even in their recruiting processes, to be a bit more watchful about profiles that are being presented for working with AI. So you also mentioned the impact on productivity. We see that today AI helps us save time, and it shows that if we can get it onboarded now, anticipate, it could produce massive improvements in productivity and a broader impact on other areas as well. So now let me pick up on that with Ndiata. So what are the needs for the African continent? Thank you, Youssoufa. Needs are huge. Needs are massive. And in fact, I amused myself by looking at some of the figures to compare and contrast. The world population and African population, 1.5 billion. And I looked at how many developers there are in AI. Because that's a source of competency and skills in what we're doing. And if you follow that, you can get some indication. So here, all type of development, 30 million worldwide. So this means about 4 per 1,000. If you look at Africa, it's about a 1 per 1,000 ratio. So we need skills and competencies. We need developers. We need folks training in these areas where we need skills. So that's the first point. And skills and developers and what types of specific skills we need. So we need lots. And then the second point there is computer science, architecture, developers. Keeping in mind, we know that there is a regulatory framework that has to be complied with. All companies have to comply with the country's legislation where they operate, where they're present. We know that there's lots of regulations on data, how it can be used. And this is what gives us the use cases with artificial intelligence. So regulation, legislation, combined with the type of skills necessary. So that's one point. You have the technical aspect of it, and we combine that with the regulations and see how this will be rolled out in a company, in which technology will be used. The third point I've mentioned is artificial intelligence in a plural sense, because they're different types. We talk a lot about Gen AI. There are other techniques as well regarding artificial intelligence. There's machine learning, LLMs. We'll have these 3 different types of skills combined, meaning on one hand, you have developers, architects, AI developers, and they can say, okay, here's the data we have, and they can imagine use cases for that data, develop the use cases using artificial intelligence, then looking at the applications that can be used for customers, so orange customers, or just generally speaking, end users, right? So everything we develop along that chain has to comply with legislation, with regulation, and all the techniques of artificial intelligence that continue to improve as we go along. So just looking at the numbers that I gave you, 8 billion needs. We 1.5 billion in Africa. We have tremendous needs. For developers and skills, we need other resources as well. So, Youssoufa, so the needs are massive, basically. Thank you very much, Ndiata, for these points of clarification. Philippe, over the past 2 years, pretty much everywhere, the debate for us is about AI. Does it create or does it destroy jobs? But the question is, why do we not have a clear answer to that question yet? Well, it is a bit surprising when you look at the production and we look at these international consulting firms that carry out these surveys and studies. The conclusions are always different. Sometimes you see huge negative impacts and sometimes you see more positive impacts. But I think things are sort of getting sorted out. And most recent studies, if you look at that, I would recommend 2 studies. First of all, that's the IMF report from beginning of 2024, analysis on these topics. And then the second one would be the Economic World Forum, and this covers all of the factors that will impact the world and its development and changes. You have ethics, you have the disruption of trade flows across the world. Everything is taken into consideration here. So if you take this most recent report from the World Forum, World Economic Forum, there are some considerations that say they're expecting 30 to 40% of the skills we use today that will be obsolete or to be transformed. And that's huge. You take 30 to 40%. So you will send folks to training. You have 100 employees, you send them to training. You have to enable these employees to be able to maintain their future employability. So that's something that needs organized. We can't wait for people to be lost to start taking these kinds of decisions to train. So Gartner makes these predictions. The Monetary Fund has a different one. The World Economic Forum has a different viewpoint. So it's encouraging for the Economic Forum. They say 22% of the current jobs will be displaced or moved or shifted. This means, so if you take a snapshot in 5 years' time, there's a fifth or a quarter of the jobs in 5 years' time that will be held by people who aren't there yet. So that's something important. The second parameter, and here it's positive as well, if you take all of these transforming factors, then you get at the end of it something that's positive. So the overall number of jobs evaluated by the Economic Forum is there will be an increase of 7 to 8%. So that's something similar what was in Gartner's minds when they were making those predictions in 2021, is that we realize you have to take into account all of the different types of AI and their use. If you put all the parameters into the equation, we see that our economies are developing thanks to everything that we'll be able to set up and implement to support folks, because we say 20% jobs are going to be created, moved. We have to accompany these folks. This is not something that can be done on its own. It's a real challenge. So all of the business units operating across the various countries will need to have the right vehicles to accompany people with their proper training and be ready for the future. That's what's most important.
vrai enjeu autour de l'accompagnement, autour du reskill, de la formation, pour pouvoir tirer le trait. Et là, je
Well, to keep
rebondis
moving
quelque
on,
part que, effectivement, je vois que le travail
I see that jobs aren't going to disappear. What will it actually change, though, in our activities, in what we do?
Le travail va pas disparaître demain. Ça, c'est
No, work is not going to disappear off the planet tomorrow, for sure.
Ce qui est important, qu'il faut aussi comprendre, c'est il n'y a pas d'avis tranché.
There's something else you need to understand, is that there's really no clear-cut opinion here.
Il y a encore un an et demi,
Because
on savait pas
hardly a year ago,
pouvoir faire avec
we didn't really know what we were going to be able to do with all of these amazing AIs, and we're still discovering new things. Of course, economists don't necessarily use them better than we do, and they're not really in a position to know which task or which or whatever job can be replaced. They can only hypothesize. There's another parameter that comes into play. All of these consultants, economists, and so on, reason based on a constant volume of business. And then they break it down between what will be done tomorrow through automation, with machinery, with AI, what will be done going forward, in cooperation between our own work as humans and the work of the machines, and what will continue to be performed exclusively by humans. And in fact, you just take a mass of activity and then you break it down differently for the future. But what you need to bear in mind is that there are plenty of things that we are unable to do now at all. So there's a huge potential there for value generation through better use. So you shouldn't reason in percentages. You need to bear in mind the fact that the system remains very open. So if we arm ourselves with the adequate know-how and tools, we can find these new resources that can generate value. Of course, I mean, there's medicine, there's big pharma, and so on. But there's also things that President Macron can say. But there are a whole lot of services that AI can do for us. Absolutely, we can clearly see that there will continue to be work, continue to be jobs. You need to analyze the ecosystem as a whole. And if you'll allow me, it's going to be good work, good jobs. If I look at an investigation conducted by the observatory, the AI observatory in the UK recently, I like to use recent statistics. And the fact is that they didn't only survey the UK, they surveyed various countries, including countries in Africa. I think it was Kenya and South Africa. And the interesting thing is that when you ask employees, those who were surveyed, I think in total there must be around 1,500 or 2,000 in 12 different countries. Most people say, I have gained new skills, I have strengthened my current skills, added new skills to my skill set. My job is more meaningful, more fulfilling. So there are a lot of very positive things that come out of working with AI. There are 2-3 points where we need to pay extra attention. A lot of people said that it didn't lower the intensity of their work. Work remains intense. It doesn't mean lying down in a deck chair on the beach and waiting for AI to do your job instead of you. There's still a lot of work intensity. What's reassuring is that in order to learn things from work, you need to work with what's difficult. And we're still facing difficulties at work, even with AI around. That can also generate stress because employers need to be reasonable. You know, on our side, we need to be reasonable. We mustn't point fingers at employees by just saying, okay, now you have AI, you're going to have to work more and better. But on the whole, it's all very positive. Absolutely. But so Ndiata, when you look at the African continent, issues of the employability or job worthiness of young people, are there opportunities in the very short term? Of course, Youssoufa. And I like what Philippe was saying. You need to go and face the difficulties. There are immediate needs in the job market. Let me tell you about the process through how you can transition from an idea to a service with AI. In order to produce all of this, you need data. And there's going to be more and more data. Greater volumes of data. Very fast growth. So huge volumes of data that we're going to need to handle. And we're going to need to store that data and therefore build data centers. And Orange is continuing to build the hardware to absorb these huge volumes of data that are rising exponentially. So that requires skills. The skills in the field of networks, cybersecurity, in managing these types of sensitive facilities. And then there will be servers that will be there to store the data and store the services that we're going to be developing in future. And that will require skills. Skills in infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, all of these skill sets in terms of software architecture, implementation, distribution, management of these infrastructures, because there's going to be, on the one hand, storage, and on the other hand, processing, in order to develop applications based on AI. So in addition to the infrastructure of these data centers, there's a whole layer of how the data can be processed, transformed. And we are talking about huge levels of data. I was telling you that we're now into reaching the zettabyte level. So lots of data. And in order to go out there, retrieve information, verify information quality, secure the information, follow, track and trace the information, go back to the source to identify whether it's good or bad. There are a whole lot of tools that serve for data management. And then there are tools that serve to develop algorithms through AI that can be trained to ensure that they're working properly, that they yield the expected results, and then they can be deployed, rolled out in real life, in the real world. Once you've examined the model with small amounts of data or bigger amounts of data, and then you scale up and go into the real world and deliver it to end users. We're talking about tens of millions or hundreds of millions of end users. And then the AI requires maintenance so that it stays on top of its game. So a whole lot of skills are needed. Architecture, knowledge of IA technologies, knowledge in operations of all of this, in order for us to produce services and applications that are based on AI. And that is today. Everything that I've just mentioned is not for the future, it's for today. We need these skills now. Because the infrastructure is being built, use cases are being designed, and these use cases need to be contextualized. One example that I often evoke, it's the number of languages that Africa has, and Orange is working on it. We can facilitate communication between different languages real time. So you can really see that there's a huge need for skills today, right now. So that is what I can say to answer your question. Thank you, Ndiata. That really shows that we have answers to give you, and it can have a significant impact. Let me turn back to Philippe. There are thousands of people who are watching this online at the moment, probably a lot of young people, and they often have questions or interrogations about their prospects, their job prospects for the future, what sort of skills do they need to nurture. If you were to give them a few tips, what would you say? What would you tell these young people? How can they face all of this huge change that lies ahead? I think I'm going to pick up on what Ndiata just said on that particular aspect. One of the points where I agree with you is that AI does not deny the skills that you are already leveraging as part of your job. Earlier this week, I looked at data from the German AI observatory that looked at where AI was being rolled out. And they saw that around 30, 35, 40% of businesses were already using AI. And if you look at the evolution of things, they believe that by 2030, every single German business will be using AI. So whatever your sector, whatever your job, you will be faced with AI and you will need to use AI, or at least to take a stance. So everyone's concerned. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen in a couple of years and probably quicker than people think. So young people who are entering the job market today, I'm more familiar with French students personally, but surveys show that students themselves, like between 90 to 100% of students themselves, are already using AI. It's important to them, and they're not going to give that up. So are they all students who want to become data scientists? Do they want to become data engineers? Do they want to develop machine learning services? Not necessarily. They're studying finance or HR or whatever, but they are using AI nonetheless. So I'm not saying that everyone must rush to take high-level courses in AI, but everyone needs to inject a little bit of AI into all the different curricula. Orange partnered with a school here in France to create a training curriculum for managers, for a sales force, but based on all of the knowledge they were going to need about AI. Because whatever you're studying, whatever your specialty, whatever the curriculum, if there's no AI in it, try to get the adequate training or do your own research. Take your time to understand how it works, what doesn't. Try to understand. So whatever your job, when you're a young person, to go and work in a bank, you want to work in agriculture, you want to work in sales, or you want to work in data engineering or the cloud, there is something in there for you in terms of AI, and that is an absolute must. Thank you, Philippe. It's true, whatever sector you wish to work in, or whatever your specialization, it's very important that you should embrace and onboard AI. Another question for Ndiata. What would you tell young people who are discovering the job market or who are still in school? What advice would you have for them in terms of AI developments? Well, Philippe described the key steps. I think there's another approach, but it's more or less the same. You need to acculturate. It's important. And that takes a lot of curiosity. Everything that you can discover about AI is important. Go for it. Second point. In the job you want to do in future, is AI a tool? The answer is probably yes. But what sort of tool? To pick up on the example, languages. In my job, am I going to be working with people from different communities who speak different languages? If the answer is yes, you need to embrace the tool. So, acculturation is important. And then the second level is, are there tools for my own specific job? And then third question, is it part of my job to actually create the tool? And to pick up on local languages again, those who are going to be developing the tool, that is going to be their job. How do you train the models? What type of data do you need? In order to speak Swahili and have someone on the other side who speaks Wolof or Lingala. How do I handle that? How can I train the model? How can I check its reliability? So there are 3 levels there. And that question, these 3 questions, need to become a central concern. But the basics is to remain curious, to acculturate, and to say, okay, this is a tool I'm going to be using. Thanks very much, Ndiata. And I think maybe to go a little bit further. A couple of months ago, I was at the Polytechnic University of Yamoussoukro in Côte d'Ivoire with our colleagues from Orange Côte d'Ivoire, where we had a day talking to students. And as you were saying, Philippe, a lot of people are using AI already. They have a huge appetite for that. And they don't necessarily want to become data scientists or data engineers or data architects. These are young people who work in HR or legal or other support functions and who can really feel, who really have a sense that AI can help. That day we spent with all of these young people was extremely enlightening. Of course, there are a lot of questions that remain about how you can focus on AI and how my own focus of AI gives me added credibility when I go to a job interview. And research shows that businesses that recruit, that hire, tend to value AI-based skills much more than in the past. Not necessarily for specialists in that field, but also for non-specialists. It's actually very useful on the job market. So perhaps a couple of words of conclusion from both of you. If we were to close this sequence about AI and employability in the general sense, Ndiata, what would you say in conclusion to this segment?
Soyez curieux, soyez curieuse.
Be curious, be curious.
Vraiment, allez vers l'IA.
Go for it.
Comme j'ai dit,
Take a look at AI.
chaque opportunité que vous avez,
Every opportunity you get
de vous approprier, n'hésitez pas.
to build your culture, to educate yourself, don't hesitate. AI is going to become pervasive, ambient in every business sector. Some people will just be using it as a tool, as an aid, like you use your laptop. You don't necessarily make laptops to use them. And there are others who are going to be in the business of making the AI. So learn, acculturate, and then you will be in a position to say, okay, this is one of the tools that I can use in my job, or this is one of the tools I'm going to build as part of my job. And then, how do you learn? How do you manage your skill set to do that particular job? That's what I could say in conclusion. And also, don't forget that there are plenty of opportunities on this continent because we need technicians, we need engineers to work on this. Thank you, Ndiata. Philippe? Well, to pick up on what Ndiata was saying, I started by saying that people are worried in the face of AI and its effects on the job market. Work with AI, go for it, discover it, and I think you will stop worrying. You will see how fascinating it is, how it can bring you fantastic opportunities. I'm over 50, and when I was young, we didn't have all of that. It can really help you to learn new things, and that's what's make AI deeply fascinating. AI is always in a good mood, always there to answer any query, 24/7, and sometimes when it gets it wrong, it'll reformulate. It's very patient, and it's going to be a great help throughout your career. Something fascinating. So I'd love to be a young person and have a few more decades to build on my knowledge of AI and work with AI. And I'm sure it would open many doors. Okay, many thanks, Ndiata. Many thanks, Philippe, for your input. There are a couple of key takeaways in what you said. Curiosity, let's be curious. Let's not let ourselves be stopped in our tracks because we're afraid of what lies ahead. Let's be responsible in the way we use AI, because beyond the positive impact, there's also a responsibility dimension that's important. And since this morning, I've heard a lot of talk about inclusion, about bridging gaps with AI, or AI and jobs, and all of the opportunities that exist right now, right here, right now. And it can help us it can help each and every one of us. So I would also like to close this conference by reminding you that AI is an opportunity for all of us. It's a huge opportunity for all of us. It can help us to transform our dreams, to make our dreams come true. It's a fantastic tool. Orange is there to support you. Orange est là. Orange is there behind you to help you gradually transition into the world of AI and optimize the manner in which you can leverage these opportunities. And it's also an opportunity for me to thank you. There are a great many of you watching us online who've been with us since this morning. More than 30,000 people registered. We received more than 5,000 questions about all sorts of topics that really show how interested all of you are. And I'd also like to thank the Orange Digital Center Network for giving us this opportunity to talk about AI, innovation with our partners, with our entire ecosystem and the huge impact it can have on development, and particularly in Africa. So again, many thanks to all of you, many thanks to all of our speakers, Steve, Janet, Rodba, Faisal, Emily, Natalie, Vincent Nadal, Ndiata, Philippe, for your energy throughout the day. So thanks everyone. Bye and see you soon.